Hello, readers. Welcome to 20 Questions with Your Favorite Author, where we ask authors important questions like, why would you agree to be on this podcast? Our guest this week is Kevin Ikenberry, core author in the wildly successful Four Horsemen universe. He's also a lifelong space geek and retired Army officer. He even used to manage the U.S. Space Camp program, and you better believe I'm going to ask him about that. If he is not your favorite author now, he will be your favorite author after. Yay! See? I still messed it up because I forgot to introduce myself, but surely people know who I am by now, right? So excellent. Thank you for agreeing to be on, Kevin. I know your life keeps you busy.
Just a little bit. Thanks for having me, though.
Absolutely. I remember last Superstars, last one we were allowed to have. And so we were there early, and you were eating with Michael Anderle. And I can't remember who was there first. And then I came up and I said something to you guys, and you're like, where are you going? Come join us. And I was like, what? I get to sit at the cool kids table? It was awesome.
It was fun. I was trying to cram in a lunch in between sessions, and I had no intentions of sitting down and doing anything other than eating. And then Michael came by and Kevin McLaughlin came by, and pretty soon I had this table of people in the restaurant. I felt bad, but it was fun.
Mark Leslie Lefebvre stopped by. It was like one after another.
Exactly.
It was awesome. I felt like one of the cool kids. That's the magic of Superstars, for anyone wondering. So we have lots of irreverent and very important questions for this podcast, so I hope you're ready.
Let's do it.
All right. First question. Where do you get your ideas?
I've always been creative, so I don't necessarily have a normal source. It just kind of depends. They pop into my head sometimes. Some of them are worth writing down. Some of them are worth extrapolating, and some of them I kick around for a little bit and then throw away. It's funny though that the ones that stick with you the most are the ones that you actually end up doing something with, and it might be something that it may be years and years later that this actually happens. And that happened to me. I had two disparate ideas, and the first was, we were driving across Kansas in the middle of the summer, which is obviously thunderstorm season. And so there was a thunderstorm that had produced a tornado just off to the north of the interstate. And I used to live in Kansas, so I've seen tornadoes. It's not that big of a deal. But I remember having a thought about the tornado and thought about those guys that jump in the suits that look like flying squirrels and they fly through canyons. I thought, what would it be like if somebody did one of that, jumped like that into a tornado? And I just kind of filed that idea away. And about, I'd say 3 years after that idea, I got a call for an anthology of extreme planets. And it just all of a sudden came together, and I wrote that story. So you never know where they're going to come from, but sometimes the ones that are the most important ones are the ones you don't have to write down.
That's awesome. For the record, I'm just seeing fur all over. That's what I'm seeing. So question, why did you start writing?
So I had no desire to be a writer growing up. You have the folks that will tell you that they were 6 or 7 years old, that they wanted to be a writer, or they got a typewriter and all that stuff. And I was not that person. Now I was told in high school and then again in college I was a good writer, and I had an English minor. I was going to go to law school, so I thought that would help me write good legal briefs. Mm-hmm. Thank God I didn't do that. But I was back on active duty with the Army. I was sitting in my office one idle Tuesday afternoon, and I had a character start talking to me. And I recognized, this was a story idea. So I started putting it down on paper with my notebook. And after about 2 pages of notes, I thought, this is a book. How the hell do I write a book? So I ended up going and taking a creative writing class, which, I'd already had a creative writing class in college. And I turned in my first assignment to the professor there at the university where I was teaching ROTC. And she said, why aren't you published? And I had no answer to that. And so I started the journey towards publication at that point.
That's awesome. It came to you. You didn't have a choice.
Not really. No, the muse popped up and said, you need to write this. And I did. And I've been doing it ever since.
It's fantastic. So we've had a few writers in the Four Horsemen universe. So how did you get started with this property?
So I found my way to the Four Horsemen by means of my friend Chuck Gannon. Dr. Charles E. Gannon. Chuck he's written several books with Baen Books. And when the Four Horsemen universe was being started up, one of the things that Chris Kennedy and Mark Wandry wanted to do was to widen out the universe from the first 4 books that they wrote. And the idea was that they would have book 5 in the universe be an anthology. And the anthology would bring in new writers, new storylines, and they would kind of see where they could potentially take things in the universe. And as they were going through this process, they approached Chuck to write the foreword for the first anthology. And in the process of that conversation, Chuck and I had met at one of the World Cons, I think the World Con in Kansas City. And Chuck said, if you guys familiar with Kevin? And neither Chris or Mark had heard of me or anything along those lines. And so Chris sent me the information for the anthology, sight unseen, based on Chuck's recommendation, and I wrote a story. Nice. And when I turned in the story, I got an email back from Chris about 3 hours later that said, "Can you write a book?" And then I said, of course, the answer to that question is almost always yes. And then that turned into, "Can you write 2 more books? And then would you like to be one of the 6 core authors?" And I, of course, said yes.
Nice. Hey, Kevin Petway wants to know, what did your wife say when you told her you were going to be a writer?
My wife's always been very supportive of what I do. She's not necessarily like a science fiction or fantasy fan. Mm-hmm. And so that aspect of things has always been a little bit difficult because she's just not a pop culture person. You know, she doesn't watch movies and have any tie to fandom or anything along those lines. And she enjoyed the fact that I was telling stories, and it was, you know, when the first novel sold, when my debut novel sold in 2014, it was after I'd been very sick and near death at some point during the year, and all of a sudden I had this novel that sold, and it was kind of like, this is a big deal sort of a thing, and so yeah, she's always been very supportive.
That's awesome. Yeah, we Kellys rock.
We do.
Yeah. For those of you in the know, we just found out that Kevin's wife's name is Kelly. And since my husband's name is Kevin, it was hilarious, just for the record. Small world. Let's see. As a retired Army officer, how much of your military career do you pull from to construct your worlds and characters?
A lot, actually. So having the background of a military officer and writing primarily military science fiction, there's certain things that come easy. You know, a characterization, you know, I've written characters that are conglomerations of some of the officers whom I've met, and some of the soldiers whom I've met, good and bad, and those interactions give the subject matter a little bit more sense of genuineness. It's a much more genuine relationship. When you're writing about tactics and weapons and that sort of thing, it's certainly easy to pull from that too, but I think as a military sci-fi author, I try to toe the line pretty closely. I don't want to go into the 3 or 4 page description, if you will, of weapon systems and, you know, how they're made and what they do and everything else. It doesn't necessarily matter. You know, a bomb is a bomb, a missile's a missile, sort of a thing. So I don't necessarily think you have to go that full route.
Not unless you're Tom Clancy.
Well, and I was just getting ready to say that at Phoenix Comic-Con a couple years ago, I was asked the same question, and I told the audience, never go full Clancy. You have to figure out what's going to be the right amount of detail for your audience, and then let them fill in the blanks.
I love it. That's great. Use everything. Let's see. Friday Blue wants to know, which one of your characters would you like to take to lunch?
God, that's a great question. I think that the one that I would like to take to lunch the most would be Jessica Francis. She is the first human peacemaker, and she was the subject of my short story for the Four Horsemen universe, and now has become a major character and has multiple novels written about her or in the plot line that she's currently pursuing. I was asked one time why I wrote her the way that I did, because you know typically, you know, guys who write strong female characters tend to get a little bit of grief from people. You know, why do you do this? Why do you do this? You're a guy. You shouldn't be writing a female character. But I had a friend of mine whom I really respect said, you know, you've really written this character really well. Why did you write her like this? And I said, well, I have 2 daughters. And I wanted my daughters to read a story about a strong female protagonist that I wrote and not come to me in a few years and say, Dad, what the hell? I wanted it to be a character that they could see why she is who she is, being not necessarily fiercely independent, but just in the fact of the matter that she solves problems rather than waiting for the solutions to come to her. She's very much a character of action. So
Nice.
I
And
would
what's a peacemaker?
Yes, Peacemaker.
What is that?
So Peacemaker is in the Four Horsemen universe. The universe is divided into guilds. And so the guild that's in charge of law enforcement is the Peacemaker Guild.
Gotcha.
So every race in the known galaxy commits people every year to be peacemakers. And until Jessica comes along, no human had made it through the selection process. So she is kind of set up to kind of be the best of the best, but then the rest of the Galactic Union is not necessarily sure that they want a human peacemaker. So they make things very difficult on her with the first book and so forth.
Excellent. And Maya says Jessica is awesome. So apparently you've done a good job.
I like to think so. There was nothing more crazy than seeing a cosplayer of her at DragonCon a couple years ago. That blew my mind.
Huh. Let's see. Oh, well, we've got the opposite question from Nick Steverson. He says, which antagonists of your own creation do you despise the most?
Let's see.
Is his name Nick? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, Nick. No, it's not. That could be another Nick, though. I've got a couple of friends of the same name. Wow. So I think the antagonist so far that I despise the most is probably the one from my book Runs in the Family. He is a conglomeration of Army officers whom I worked with or for at some point during my career, and really exemplified all the worst qualities of all those people put together. So you never had somebody that was that bad, but being a conglomeration, yeah, he's one I pretty much despise because he is literally the absolute worst of 5 or 6 different people conglomerated together. It's like concentrated
Nightmares.
evil.
Ooh, nightmares come to life. Nightmares come to life. Let's see. What project that's in progress or not started yet are you most excited about?
I'm working on a project with Chris Kennedy that we are in progress on. It's called the Guardian Covenant, and it's got a very, very serious kind of Pacific Rim, Robotech, Macross Plus sort of a feel to it, with humans and giant robots fighting aliens. And so we've had a lot of fun with it. We're looking at doing it as a very different kind of project, writing shorter novels. So the novels are coming in between 70 and 80,000 words, and trying to keep the subject matter kind of fun, if you will. And so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about I'm working on what we call the Rise of the Peacemakers, which is a series in the Four Horsemen universe that I'm curating. And we're about halfway through that series now, and it's really ramping up the storyline along with what Jessica and her friends are about to go and do, and the impact that's going to have on the overall universe. So that's also something that's very near and dear to my heart at this point.
Well, that sounds very interesting. Kevin wants to know, like I said, there's lots of Kevins. He wants to know if he's unfamiliar with the Jessica books, which one should he start with?
You're going to want to start with Peacemaker. That's the first book.
That's easy to remember.
And the first chapter of the first book actually retells the ending of the short story from the original anthology, but from Jessica's point of view. So if you get the book and you're interested in that, then the anthology was called A Fistful of Credits.
Nice. So there you go. Peacemaker. Oh, Maya answered it too. Sorry, I see Maya. She said Peacemaker too. So apparently that's the way to go.
Maya is not only my editor, she's been my first reader for about 6 or 7 years now. So Maya, and
she's a fan, so that tells you something.
Maya is amazing. She is a very vital part of everything that I do.
That is awesome. Let's see. Old Jester wants to know, as an author, when you feel a burnout coming on, how do you beat it, get through it, avoid it?
There's a couple of ways. One, I normally will take a break. That could even be just a night or two of not writing, not trying to focus anything on effort with the keyboard. If I feel like I'm under pressure to get to a self-imposed deadline, oftentimes what I'll do with the burnout is I'll take a little bit of a break, but then I'll come back to the computer and I'll work on something completely different. Just even for a night, I'm gonna write 500 words of something totally different and see what happens. because burnout's a very real thing, and for most writers it comes from a feeling of inadequacy, that they're not capable of putting the words on paper the way that they see them, or the way that it's acting in their heads, and it becomes a kind of a negative spiral that I just can't do this. I suck, I'm terrible. And I went through this probably, I'm going to guess it was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I was chatting one night with a friend of mine, and I made the comment that, I just feel like my writing's flat, like it just sucks right now, and I don't know what to do. I'm just really burned out. And he said, write 1,000 words in something that you would never write, something that you would never, ever, ever want to send to press. And I said, okay. So I got off the chat program with him, and I opened up Microsoft Word, and I wrote 1,000 words of a zombie apocalypse story. And zombie apocalypse does not appeal to me at all, but it was the first thing that popped into my head when I opened up the keyboard. Uh-huh. So I finished the 1,000 words, and I sent it to him, and he wrote me back about 5 minutes later with, "Screw you."
This is great.
This is pretty damn awesome. And, he told me to kind of get over my feeling of that I couldn't do it, because I certainly could. And it was fun. About a year and a half ago, that story, actually, I was able to expand that 1,000 words into a short story, and I sold it to an anthology.
How funny. You just needed that kick in the pants.
And you all do. And then the other way that you get through it, aside from doing something totally different, is mm-hmm. just to take a break. If it's walking around the block or taking a break for a couple of days and focusing on other things. I mean, I have a couple of other hobbies I like to do. I like to play golf. I like to get out and hike. And of course, having kids, I'm always playing with them. So doing that sort of stuff is always good to just get your mind off of what you're trying to do, so that you can get out of your own way.
Excellent. Good advice. Let's see. Matt Novotny. I apologize if I chopped your name. Which of your characters would you most likely wake up in jail with, and how did you get there? You can tell I don't read the questions before I read them. That's great. I'm stealing that one.
Let's see. It would probably be a character that Kevin Steverson and I created in our books in the Four Horsemen universe, what we call the redacted books. We have Redacted Affairs, and then Redacted Vice comes out on the 5th of March. And it's kind of a take on the old buddy cop movies, where you have a serious guy and kind of a wild guy, but they have a couple of supporting characters who are in the universe, they're called push talls. And so you think of them as kind of like an anthropomorphic Bengal tiger. But in this particular case, these are twins, twin brothers, but they were raised by a human from North Georgia. So they don't talk like their normal race. They talk like they're from North Georgia. And one of them is named Ricky, and we came up with a phrase that it has really kind of stuck, but just basically it's called Ricky shit. That Ricky just makes things up. He does whatever he wants to do, and it's a Ricky shit solution. So Ricky would be the one that I would most likely wake up in jail with, and it was probably something that he thought he could get away with.
That's so funny. He's like, that didn't work. That's funny. That is a great question. Everyone's a big fan of Ricky shit, so we're going to start using that now, just warning you. Seems like a lot of the Four Horsemen stuff catches on, like red shirting people, and it's a whole culture. I love it.
It's been a lot of fun. I mean, writing in the Four Horsemen universe has really changed my life as far as a writer. And it's so fun to see the fans and see the organization that now has popped up, our Mercenary Guild fan organization. And again, the cosplay that you see and the fan interactions, it's really pretty spectacular. I would never have imagined being at Dragon Con the last time we had it and being sought after by two fans from Australia who just happened to be there and were Four Horsemen fans, and they wanted to meet all of us. It was amazing.
That's so cool. It's so much fun. When we can have cons again.
Yes, soon.
Yes, I signed up for 4 this summer. Hopefully they'll happen. We do have a traditional question that we must ask. So what I need to know is, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip, hands down.
Good choice. Good choice. Mint chocolate chip. Let's see. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. I want to see if I missed anything, but I think we're good. We do. It looks like we have a SSG Jacobs on.
Okay.
There's a new person. Let's see. Who else have I not said was on? Matt, Nick. Yeah, I think I mentioned everyone else. So you have lots of people on saying hi. Let's see. While we're on the idea of food, what is the best thing that you have ever, or at least recently, eaten?
It's kind of funny. One of my daughters asked me this question the other day, and it was my mom's spaghetti. My mom passed away in 2011, and I would kill to have her spaghetti one more time. But as far as recently, so my wife is a very good cook, and her grandmother lived to almost 100 years old and had a homemade recipe for cinnamon rolls that she was, I can't really say famous for, but everybody in the family always loved her cinnamon rolls. And my wife took the recipe, and of course, living in Colorado, we had to make some adjustments for high altitude. But she's made some other tweaks to the recipe that are phenomenal. And so she made cinnamon rolls on Sunday morning, and they're the best cinnamon rolls I've ever had. So it was something where she tweaked a couple things in the recipe, and I basically said, "You need to keep this one. This one's really good."
Write that down. Don't forget. Write it down.
They were amazing. So
that's fantastic. I love baking. I forget about the Colorado difference, though. I guess I'd remember if I was there. You know, in Houston, we're at or below sea level, so that's one thing I don't have to worry about.
Yeah, when we first moved here, there were opportunities to bake that did not turn out so well.
Let's see. Dave wants to know, how many drafts do you go through in your writing process, and how long does one book take you to write?
I'll answer the second question first. On average, the draft of a book takes me between 6 and 8 weeks for the most part. I've gotten into a really good process as far as that's concerned. So every once in a while, I'll have a book that'll run a little bit longer than that, but I haven't had a book written in the last probably 4 years that's taken me longer than 3 months. So definitely less than 3 months. As far as drafts are concerned, I write a first draft. And what I typically do with that first draft is, in my outlining process, I identify where the first act ends, if you will. And so I'll write the book through the first act, and then I'll stop. And then I'll go and I'll actually do a full edit on that first act and really kind of get my notes down, because even though I outline, I always leave room in there for my characters to move, because I always feel like if I'm in the headspace of a character and they want to diverge a little bit from the outline, I should give them a little bit of that and see where that goes. And if I give it a little bit and it looks like it's going to be okay, then I'll let that continue to go. But if not, at that point, I can bring them back to the outline. And at the end of the first act is always the moment where you're transitioning from the what the character thought they knew in their own environment, and then traveling on the big adventure or whatever else. So that's a good point to stop and really kind of make the notes of, I wanted them to do X, Y, and Z, but now they've done P, D, and Q. What do I do here? And how can I bring them back, or what does this change in the outline further on? And I found that that's been a very helpful part of the process.
Nice.
And then after that, I finish the rest of the first draft, let it sit for usually a week or two before I even come back to thinking about it. And then I'll come back in and I'll do another read-through pass. And then after the read-through pass, at that point, I will most likely send it on to Maya for the first read and the first editorial piece. And then we'll hash that out, typically one draft there, and then it's pretty much ready to go to the publisher at that point.
That's awesome. You've got it honed. You know, I always say, I'm an outliner myself, and I always say that the outline never survives first contact with the characters. It just
it never does. It never does. But the idea is that, an outline's kind of like a road atlas, right? Back in the days when we carried road atlases in our car, and you could say, I want to go from Houston, Texas to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And you can travel the direct route, or you can travel the scenic routes. And the idea is your outline is written on that fast route, but your characters are going to want to stray off and see the scenic parts at some point in time. And so you kind of let them have the gas mileage to do that. And if it's a wrong turn, you can easily bring them back to the outline, or you can strike what you had in mind there and bring them back to where they needed to be.
It might change Disney World.
You never know.
That's right. Let's see. Jessica wants to know, what was your inspiration behind your character, Jessica? Oh, he talked about that earlier. And is it true that all Jessicas are amazing people?
So Jessicas are amazing people.
She's our guest next week.
But so it's funny that we're talking about Jessica. Jessica, when she was written in the first short story, was a plot device. I was working with her ex-husband's mercenary company who was in the process of making a really bad decision, and they find her basically trying to come in and figure out what they're trying to steal. And so she ends up kind of saving the day with them. And I had written her just kind of I didn't think it was going to be anything to go with. It wasn't my idea to write a character that was going to become a core figure of the Four Horsemen universe. She was a throwaway. And when Chris wrote me that email about, do you want to write a book, we'd really like it to be about Jessica, I had to be like, wow, where am I going to come up with this now? So now I have to come back and I have to build this character who I put into this situation. And she's really been a joy to create and write. It's so much fun.
That's awesome. For the record, Jessica says that her husband also thinks that she is a plot device. Apparently it's a Jessica thing.
I was the only guy in the theater with the second Lego movie with my kids that laughed out loud when the main character turns to a friend and goes, "It's a CPD. It's a convenient plot device."
It's nice when they put those little jokes in just for us. They're just for us.
You know, the writers had a lot of fun writing that one in there.
No doubt. No doubt. I was rewatching the Muppet thing and they were doing a running gag, right? So they were, they talked about the running gag and I was like, that's so funny. So, and I had to explain to my daughter what that meant. So your covers are gorgeous and they all blend together. And I like that the covers actually have like characters on them and like there's a bit of the story on there. Mm-hmm. So why has like the Four Horsemen, why they decided to go that route?
It's really been a lot of fun with the Four Horsemen universe to kind of see how the covers have continued to develop, because the big mechanical suits of armor that you see don't necessarily fit with the description of how they would actually look in the book. But because the artist that we have has done such a good job with the characterization and the building of the different models of what we call Caspers, the combat assault suit personnel. He's really done such a good job. It's been fun to take that and be able to kind of run with it. In my case, with the covers for all the books that I've been a part of, I've actually sketched all of those. And so had the idea of to figure out what the cover would look like if I'm writing with a co-author, we kind of put it together and then we'll send that information forward to Chris Kennedy and he sends that to the artist, and the artist has yet to disappoint us on a cover. It's just really fantastic work.
Very nice.
You don't necessarily get the opportunity to always work with a publisher that will let you explore what you want on a cover. Mm-hmm. And to have the opportunity to do this and to create some of the covers that I've created is really cool.
Nice. Well, I'll tell you, I've been dying to ask, and Vicky asked earlier too, about this, space camp thing you used to manage. Do you have any like fun stories from there? And can adults come?
So adults can still go to space camp. Yes, they still do adult weekends. So I went to graduate school at Mississippi State, and when I graduated from there, I was looking for a job, and I found myself in the Huntsville, Alabama area. And I decided while I was looking for work, I would go to the Space and Rocket Center and just get a job as a tour guide, because I'd always been a space geek. Since my first real memory of television is 1975, the Apollo-Soyuz test project. I remember watching that as a kid. And then when I was 11 years old, I wrote my congressman in Tennessee and told him I wanted to be an astronaut. And I went to see the third launch of the space shuttle with a VIP pass, which was pretty cool. And so I've always been involved with and wanted to do the space thing. And so I went for the job, and they looked at my job application and like, we'll be right back. And so I went up and met with the vice president for the aerospace programs, Space Camp and Aviation Challenge, which is the part of Space Camp that works with kids teaching high performance jet fighter pilot life. So cool. And I was hired on the spot, and I went down to the Aviation Challenge program because they had a focus there with not only with the piloting aspect, but with extensive land and water survival and working with parachutes and that sort of stuff. And I'd gone to parachute school in the Army. And so I went down there to work, and it kind of took off. I was there about 7 weeks and was made a lead counselor over the part of the land survival area. And then by the end of that summer, I was running the high school age program, so what we call the Mach 3 program. And then I became the assistant manager. And then I did that for probably about 3 years. And then I got a call from the same man who hired me. It was, I need you to run space camp. And I said yes. And so I ran space camp for about let's see, close to 2 years before I was recruited away to work with Challenger Learning Centers, which is the centers that were started by the astronauts' families from the Challenger accident. So I worked with them for a couple of years, and then the Army caught notice of me doing stuff in the space world and said, "Hey, you want to come back and be a space guy full time?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do that too." So that's how I ended up back on active duty doing space stuff. So
That's so cool.
and yeah, there's a million stories from space camp. It's honestly probably the best 5 years of my professional life outside of when I taught ROTC, because there was so much to it. I made lifelong friends from space camp. I have 3 guys that are like my brothers, and we're still trading text messages every day. We probably had this text stream going for, since text messages became a thing. So it really was a fantastic place, and it taught me a lot about not only myself and how to teach and deal with others, but really how to, it sounds corny, but how to understand what people's dreams are and do your best to help them reach them if you can.
That's fantastic. Do your girls have any interest in the space program?
Both of them are interested in space, but not to the point that I was. There's a lot of other things, competing factors these days. Yeah. But the other day with the Perseverance landing, both of them thought that was pretty cool. So we'll see what happens.
It was exciting. We were all cheering on the ground like we had anything to do with it. But gosh doggone it, we were just as happy.
Hey, space flight's not easy. So when you see something like that succeed, it's a pretty monumental achievement. It really is.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. We're watching the Right Stuff redo, the remake one on Disney. That's actually a TV show. And it's like we've seen it. We live in Houston. We've been to Johnson Space Center a bazillion times. Yeah. So we've seen the actual capsule they were in, but to actually watch it on the screen, when they first see it, and these huge guys. I mean, these are pilots. They're not like 5'1" like I am, right? So trying to get into it's incredible that we went to space in a freaking tin can that was just screwed together. It's incredible. It's incredible. And now we send tin cans to Mars that are very fancy tin cans.
Yeah, Mini Coopers, basically. That's right. It's impressive. It really is.
It's incredible. Let's see. Well, so speaking of your work career, how about your vacation life? What is your idea of a vacation?
Vacations it's been interesting over the last couple of years, of course, with COVID and everything else. We've looked at vacations very differently. We tend to do a lot of mini vacations. Weekend getaways, going up to the mountains, or going down to Arizona to visit my dad, or Kansas to visit family, or Texas to visit friends. So we tend to look at it a little bit differently. But at the same time, we've done the recent Disney trip, 4 years ago. So, doing the big vacation, sure, you can absolutely, go for it as much as you can. But the idea is you're not always going to get the chance to take the big vacations. So take the little ones. And living in Colorado, there's so many things in the state that we haven't seen that it's been fun to be able to do little weekend trips. Hey, let's go to Mount Princeton, or let's go up to Breckenridge. Let's spend time in the state versus, let's think about, let's go to Hawaii. Well, that's really not all that cost effective or anything else. So, I did 2 kids on an airplane for 6 to 8 hours. No. So, it's fun to be able to do the smaller ones and to be able to really appreciate what's around you.
Yes, I can totally agree with that. I wonder, because I always notice how a lot of people, they live in a state and they never see the things in that state they're in. So that's kind of cool. You're bringing the girls around, but I'm wondering, because I always like to go see everything. Oh, yeah. And I wonder if that's the military thing, because I was a military brat too. I was a brat, and then I was in the military. So I don't know. It's like when you're at a place, now you want to go see those things. So I wonder how much of the military influenced that kind of thing. My husband, he's born and bred in Texas. He had never seen the Alamo. I'm like, what do you mean we're going to see the Alamo now?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, because you want to be immersed in the area that you're in. You want to be able to see things and be familiar with it, because that familiarity makes it feel more like home, even if you're there for a short period of time.
You don't know when you're leaving, so it's not like, I'll do that later.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree.
Yep. I wonder. So we can learn something from military people. Let's see. Did I miss a question? Safa, you got to let me know if I missed a question. I was like having fun at the interview. I don't know what I was thinking. Let's see. It says if Percy runs into a Casper, he will be crushed. He will be a crushed tin can. Who's Percy?
Percy Perseverance. That's what they're calling the rover. They gave him the nickname.
I missed the nickname. How funny is that? Yes, I guess he would be crushed, poor little guy. But he's so cute. They wouldn't want to hurt him. Let's see. Disney stomps on Universal sandwiches? I don't know what that means.
There was a discussion
of Florida.
Yeah, there was a discussion of Universal versus Disney and the merits of the two. And yeah, but I think we're good on questions, except Matt Novotny had one that Old Jester helpfully dropped back in the chat.
Yes, I see that. So he wants to know, Matt wanted to know, what are your plans for teaching in the future? And how do you see that working with your writing and appearance commitments?
So I do still like to teach courses for writers. I found that during the COVID times, it's been hit or miss with the audience as far as just working through their own burnouts and where you're going to spend your money, sort of a thing. I had planned to try to do a masterclass in story structure sometime in February, but that's not going to happen with only 5 days left in the month and with my commitments and everything now. So I'm looking at the rest of the year. I think as things slowly return to normal, there'll be some opportunities to do some story structure classes, and that information will be on my website when the time comes. I've got a page for courses on how you can get the information and sign up, and then what the course would actually be like. I will be, provided it goes, I will be the guest writing workshop instructor at FinCon in Dallas in September.
Nice.
So I will be there as the writing workshop instructor, which is really amazing for me, considering some of the folks who have been at the writing workshop as the instructor the last 5-6 years. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool. Maybe I'll have to drive up and see you. That's not during Dragon Con though, right? Because we have priorities.
It's 2 weeks after Dragon Con.
Okay. All right. We'll have to look at that one because everything's going to happen this year. I just put the positive vibes out there. So awesome. So question, where can fans find you and your work?
So I'm obviously all over social media, though I don't do too much with it. So I'm at Facebook. So facebook.com/author Kevin Ikenberry is my author page. I'm on Twitter. I don't do a whole lot with Twitter, but my handle there is @TheWriterIke. That's pretty much it for main social media. My website is kevinikenberry.com. That has pretty much everything you could ever want there, along with my mailing list that you can sign up for and get the information not only about books, but about future course commitments and that sort of thing too. I think that's pretty much it.
Excellent. And what are you promoting right now?
So I have Redacted Vice with Kevin Steverson that comes out on the 5th of March, so just about 2 weeks away. Very, very excited about that. Kevin and I have had just a tremendous amount of fun writing together. Especially when people meet us, and we have very, very much two different styles. Kevin was a career sergeant. He was a sergeant first class when he retired, so he was a career non-commissioned officer. And then me as a commissioned officer. People would look at us and go, "You guys can't write together," and we have such a fun time with it. It's been fun because people will read something and they'll comment to one of us. It's like, "I could totally tell you wrote that joke," and we were like, "Nope. Other guy wrote that joke," because we really did. It was a lot of fun to kind of cut loose.
Yes, but do you make him call you sir? Just wondering.
No. Those days are long gone. I've been retired 5 years, so I didn't want my career to end when it did because of my illness and whatever else. But I'm very happy with where things ended up. So
that's awesome. Well, we're glad you're here. We're glad you came with us. And please, everyone, make sure when you read Kevin's books, leave reviews. It's the best present you can give your author. And leave them wherever you get your books. So don't think it has to be on Amazon or it has to be on Barnes & Noble. Wherever you get them, please leave your reviews. And please review this podcast. So wherever, again, you get your podcast, we would greatly appreciate a review. And if you have any questions, please send them to Captain Wyvern, CaptWyvern @curseddragonship.com. So if you have any questions or any guests you'd like to see, let us know and we will call them and get them booked. And I think that's it. Oh, no, I have to thank our wonderful subscribers, Dave and Helen. Thank you. Thank you so much for subscribing and help making this possible so we can get an awesome video card and make this look even better. And I think that's all. We'll see y'all next week where we have a slush pile reader on. So we'll get some insight on how that works with Miss Jessica. All right, we'll see y'all next week. Thank you.